Thank you for coming. And thank you for the Whitechapel team for organizing this with AWARE. I'm very proud of having such a wonderful list of guests today. And I'll start very briefly to explain why I created AWARE now 3 years ago. It's a personal story. And I'll start with a personal anecdote. Yesterday I was walking in the Tate Modern Collection Room, and I found a very interesting show, Rauschenberg show, fantastic exhibition, very well done. There's a very interesting work called the Moon Museum, done in 1969, where the Bell Laboratory decided to send a small minuscule work to the moon, hoping that whoever was living there could discover what was art and who were the best artists. So a sculptor named Forrest Myers invited 4 other artists to participate in that minuscule work. The artists were David Noros, Claes Oldenburg, Bob Rauschenberg, and Andy Warhol. So it's not a surprise, these 5 artists were men. So whoever was living in the moon had a very short summary of history of art of the 20th century and would have discovered that art was done by men. We're in 1969. It was a very interesting detail on the label in the show describing Andy Warhol's work. It says it was a drawn initial which resembled both a penis and a space rocket. So I really like the detail because in my mind, so they send this minuscule penis to the moon. But in the same museum, 2 floors higher, there's a very interesting room that put together Andy Warhol and the Guerrilla Girls. So we're back into the subject because we can see now the huge change between 1969 and today, where Andy Warhol is put together with Guerrilla Girls on the same subject of promoting art with paper edition. So things has changed immensely. And my question today is what happened between 1969 and today? Well, another rocket has been sent to the moon. From my perspective, a 3-floor rocket made by feminism or motorized by 3 things. Feminism is one of them, collecting art is another of these strengths, and collecting information. This very strong rocket has discovered another moon, the hidden part of the moon, la face cachée de la Lune. And that's what I want to talk about today. This rocket can be described by 2 words in French. You have 1 word in English, collecting. In French, we have 2 words. We have collecter and collectionner. Collecter is about archive, and collectionner is about works of art. They share the same root, col, C-O-L-L, which means putting together, and putting together with a meaning. So I think collecting, collectionner, and collecter, they describe the same act of putting together and giving a meaning. To go back to what I do, I'm a museum curator, and as a museum curator with a 20-year experience, I know that when you work in a museum, you inherit a collection and you sort of pretend it's an objective object. It's not a right expression, but you have to organize the permanent collection to write the history for the public. And it's exactly like playing with a game of cards. You inherit a game of cards, and if this game is not good, it's very difficult to play. You can either bluff and pretend you have the right cards, or play rightly and be honest about it. Usually, and for a long time, curators have been bluffing from my point of view. In a good way. I mean, for example, you don't have a Picasso in your collection and you want to talk about Cubism. Well, you show the lesser Cubist painters and you explain what Cubism is all about. But without women artists, the bluff has been really, I think, from my point of view, on the verge of being dishonest. We've been trying to write history without the right archive and without the right works. we've had a bad set of cards. But things have changed, and in the good direction. And I don't want to blame anybody, but rather reconstruct history and shed lights on the people or the institution which have been reconstructing this history and setting the right game of cards. I became part of that history in 2009 when I worked in Centre Pompidou organizing the show called Elle. Trying to push the button. Anyway, I can still talk. In 2009, I organized the show Elle from the permanent collection, and I discovered that my game of cards was not so bad. There was a lot of women artists in the collection. So I could play a good game with that. But it was still difficult because I didn't have the right archive. So I have one part of the collection, I have the works, but I didn't have the archive. So when I started working on Elle, I discovered that I didn't have any biographies on the artists, that most of the work hadn't been shown before, that there was very little publication on these women artists. So it was a lot more work to actually show them in the museum, which explains partly why curators before me didn't show them, because it was more work. So as you know, Elle has been showing 300 artists and more than 1,000 works from the collection in Centre Pompidou. It was the first time a museum decided not to show women artists, but to push away men artists, because that's the main consequence. And we were really worried about that at the time, that they would march in the street and complain, but they didn't, of course. Elle was seen by 2.5 million visitors, so it was a huge public success. It traveled to Seattle and to Brazil, well, it was also a success. And part of I'm very proud of what I did, and my prides come from not so much putting together the show, but having so much people coming to see it. And most of these people, I've met some of them. The reason there were so many of them is that because most of them came twice or 3 times. They came first, most of them pretty negative about the whole thing, and then they were convinced and came back with the husband, the wife, the children, the friends, and that, explains the number. But that was not enough for me, because it was only part of this rocket that had to be sent to the moon. It was just the collecting. I had to collect. I had to work on the archive part of the problem. So after a few months, I tried to create an archive center in Centre Pompidou, and it proved too difficult. So I decided to do it on my own. I left the museum in 2014 and founded AWARE, as Archive of Women Artists, Research and Exhibition. My aim was very simple, to recreate this archive, to have this better game of cards, so that not only me, but everybody, other curators, students, everybody could find the right information on women artists. So I started with nothing and spent 2 years raising money, and today we're mainly supported by Fondation Chanel, but also by French government, by a lot of partly public money. We decided to build 4 programs to launch the rocket. One of them is called Qui sont-elles? The second, Parlons d'elles. The third, Où sont-elles? And the fourth, Tout sur elles. So I'll say a few words about each of them. Where Are They is really an encyclopedia, and I will show you what it looks like. Okay, this is showing you how the website works. Qui sont-elles is an encyclopedia with names and images. It looks easy, but it's actually really difficult, because in France you have to negotiate the loans of each image, and you actually have to pay. The artists are represented by a bilingual biography. It's been done with partnership with Encyclopédie des Créatrices, which is a book published 3 years ago about women artists, but also women writers and women who have been imported in a number of fields. As you can see, you can either search by name, by dates, by categories, by period. So it's a very interactive website. Of course, it's free. And it's meant to address everybody, not only art historians, but everybody who's looking for information about women artists, either to write a paper, a PhD, work on a show, so that nobody can say anymore, there's no woman artist. I mean, there's a lot of women artists, except we don't have the right information about them, or the information is difficult to get. So AWARE is supposed to be a tool, a very easy tool to use for everybody. So it's in the process of being built. There's the biographies, but also an agenda of exhibition all over the world, and also a blog with research article written by academics all over the world. It's still in the process of being built, but it takes quite a long time. I have now a 2-people team, nearly 3 people. I have a small office in Paris, Boulevard Saint-Germain, and you're all welcome to visit and to participate. So this is the first program, Were They, and I don't want to be too long, so I have to speed up a little bit. So that's the summary of what I just told you. The second program is called Let's Talk About Them, and it's events like the one we have today. It's a symposium, it's table ronde. They're meant to happen also all over the world. There was one in Portugal in May 2016, one in Poitiers in September, and we just had one in Centre Pompidou. Each of these symposium is thematic, and we bring together curators and academics, sometimes artists, to talk around a theme. In Lisbon, it was about special environments by women artists of the 60s and 70s. In Poitiers, it was around the idea of enlarged family, what we call in French parentèle. In Centre Pompidou, it was about women artists, but also women collectors, women sponsors, and it was from 18th century to today. And I'm very happy that Whitechapel is hosting the 1, 2, 3, 4th of this event, and we'll have much more in the future. So that's the second program called Let's Talk About Them. The third one is called Where Are They? And that's addressed to a larger public. There are visits in different museums centered on women artists, because in most museums, except Tate, which is an amazing exception today, pretty unique in the world. But in most permanent collection, the women artists are very rare, and they're difficult to find. So these visits are meant to discover them. They're done by curators of the museum, by art historians. They're open to the public, they're free. And we're organizing a set of them next week, around March 8th in Paris. We are partners with Musée d'Orsay, with Centre Pompidou, with Musée des Arts Décoratifs, and probably next year we'll be partner with Tate, hopefully. That's something we have to discuss. I hope. And the last program I call Où sont-elles? And well, that's the program I just explained, sorry. So that's what's happening next week. So I think that's the last slide. No, sorry, All About Them. And this is something we're still working on, and this will be publication of the symposium I mentioned, but also new lines of books, probably centered either on biographies, which haven't been published in French yet, or translating important theoretical texts on women artists. Again, a lot of these texts have been published in English, but not in French. So thank you again for your attention, and I hope you'll all visit AWARE website and or participate in our actions, because we need help. We need people to come and visit. We welcome any kind of partnership, and thank you again to Whitechapel for inviting me.